Alright, so looking at this blue graph, here's a geometric form. Is there a recognizable pattern or regularity to this shape? Is a consistency or order obvious if one decreases magnification of detail? Let's zoom out from that geometric form and look again for any recognizable pattern. Does zooming out make it easier to notice any regularity to the shape? Here we see same shape smaller. You notice anything yet? You might have noticed something in the very first display. How about if we compress the height of the shape? I'm doing this to exaggerate some of the dimensions of the shape. So the vertical axis has been compressed to 25% of the original height, but width is the same, so we can see how that looks. Here it is if we compress the width, but keep the original height. That's the tall one, skinny. Again, consider that there is an obvious pattern recognizable in that shape. Once you've seen the pattern, even in one of the compressed forms or when zoomed out, you'll probably be able to see it effortlessly in the original shape. Here's the original shape again. So to review, the above shape may now seem to you to have an instantly recognizable pattern or orderliness to it, or it may just look like a bunch of random chaos. Consider, however, that there is no such thing as random. There may actually only be recognized patterns and unrecognized patterns. Is that clear? In fact, we may even misidentify patterns, like mistaking the number 0 for the letter O. However, we may only know a 0 from an O by the context in which the content, in this case the geometric shape of a loop, occurs. Maybe the loop is an O, and maybe a 0, and maybe just a circle. So in regard to being the rulers, I propose a fundamental conceptual context that everything is orderly. In other words, there may be nothing truly random, but only patterns which are accurately identified. Patterns present but not recognized at all, or patterns recognized but inaccurately identified, or even not identified at all, but merely recognized without any interpretation or evaluation. I'll give an example of that. A pattern accurately identified would be if there's a loop in the middle of a series of letters, and I go, oh, that must be an O. Oh, that must be an O. I could see some shapes, but not really recognize the pattern in them, and I might overlook that there's a loop in the center of a horizontal bunch of scribbles. Or there could be patterns recognized but inaccurately identified, like I might see the loop but not recognize the other stuff around it and think, oh, that loop is a 0, when in fact it's an O. Or the pattern could be not even identified at all, but I could just recognize it and say, well, I see there's a loop, there's something there, but I don't really know what the meaning of it is. I don't really know what to make of it. I don't really know what the value of it is. It's like if I see a bunch of letters and I know there are a bunch of letters, but I can't identify what word it is. Maybe I can't read the handwriting very well, or maybe I just see a series of letters and I don't recognize the language. Maybe it's in a foreign language that uses the same alphabet but doesn't present a series of letters that make sense to me for any of the languages that I do understand, or at least recognize. Maybe I didn't see a word and go, oh, that's a word in Spanish. I don't know what it means, but it's a word in Spanish. That's a step. So in the cases of the shapes presented above, I did not identify the source of the shape yet. You may not know how that shape might be relevant to you, right? You might be curious already, or you might not. The first issue, though, is just that there is a recognizable pattern. Either we are interested as a priority in the rules, the recognizable patterns of life, or we are interested in something else as a priority. A second issue is precisely what context, what priorities or values we bring to the recognizing of patterns. The result of the interaction between the context we bring and the content we notice, maybe curiosity or anger or greed or gratitude or clarity or relief or any number of things. So what kinds of patterns are we looking for? Are we looking for patterns that correspond to being the rulers? Or are we looking for patterns that correspond to having convincing explanations for being consistently bitter, frustrated, resentful, and cynical? We can easily answer those questions of what patterns we may be looking for simply by noticing any patterns amongst our own experience. What kinds of experience do we consistently notice or even consistently produce through our application of a particular conceptual context? So we bring some contextual context, we notice some content through that filter of our context, and we produce an experience, or we notice an experience. We notice tension in our body, or we notice laughter or smiling, or any number of things. So it's just a practice of noticing the context of how we are looking for patterns shows up in our patterns of experience. So do we experience life as fundamentally chaotic or even disappointing? Or do we experience life as generally orderly, though occasionally mysterious, and even miraculously beautiful in its regularity, at least sometimes? Do we experience being the victim of life, the ruler of life, or just a participant or branch of life, or what? Do we experience some or all of those? Now, in the context of being the rulers, it can make a difference to be wealthy, right? In the context of being wealthy, it can make a difference to notice patterns of opportunity for consistent profit. Patterns of opportunity for consistent profit. In other words, it can make a difference to recognize trends. So on that note, here again is a little more of the above geometric pattern, which graphs the relative value or changes in the exchange rate between one popular investment index and another. I'll reveal more about that later. See if you recognize the original pattern in the below image, a chart showing 11 years of that certain exchange ratio. I'm going to pause and start another video while you're looking at that, and then you can press play on the next one.